Today from the global lane, China's bold backdoor play, flooding Canada with cheap EVs, sidestepping U.S. barriers. Trump threatens a brutal 100% tariff on all Canadian goods.
Why should we allow these rolling spy devices into the United States? Yeah, they'll be cheap, but who wants to, drive in a car where Beijing is listening to everything that you say?
Rising concerns about Trump's Board of Peace, reconstructing Gaza with non-peacemaking nations.
To give these countries a free pass to something as prestigious as the Board of Peace is something that we really do question.
81 years after Auschwitz, alarming reality. Why 1 out of 5 young Americans deny the Holocaust happened.
The reason why that number has probably increased is because people who ought to know better have been platforming and promoting people who peddle these toxic ideas.
And it's all right here on the global lane. President Trump is warning Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney that he'll impose a 100% tariff on Canadian goods if a trade deal with China moves forward. The deal would let China send 49,000 electric cars into Canada, facing only a 6% tariff. In a Truth Social post, Trump insisted Carney is sorely mistaken if he intends Canada to become, quote, a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States. At the same time, reports say a top Chinese military leader has been ousted for taking bribes and passing nuclear secrets to the U.S. So what's really happening between Canada, China, and the Chinese military? Folks, it's something to watch closely. Here to explain is China analyst with the Gatestone Institute, Gordon Chang. His most recent book is Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon, first explain this Canada trade agreement with China. It doesn't seem like it's beneficial to Canada, and there's even opposition from a number of Canadian leaders.
There are a number of voices in Canada, especially in Ottawa, with Doug Ford, the premier, who has been very critical of the deal even before it was announced. Because what Canada has done is basically pushed itself into third world status. Here you have China exporting advanced industrial products to Canada in the form of Chinese EVs. And Canada, what does it get? Well, it's selling basic agricultural commodities, canola. This typifies third world type behavior. And by the way, we're also subject to that because we sell soybeans. This is a criticism that is born from seeing this pattern elsewhere. But also with these Chinese EVs, they're going to decimate Canada's car market if they allowed it into greater quantities. Also, there's an issue here, and that is the Biden administration in January of last year took a very important step. It essentially banned Chinese EVs from the U.S. because of their internet connections. Basically, they're rolling spy machines. Well, the Trump administration, at least preliminarily, has indicated that those Chinese EVs imported into Canada will not be able to come into the United States. And that, by the way, is the right thing for us to do, because why should we allow these rolling spy devices into the United States? So I'm glad the Trump administration has made that preliminary indication, and that means that Chinese EVs are going to be even less popular. Yeah, they'll be cheap, but who wants to, drive in a car where Beijing is listening to everything that you say?
The Wall Street Journal reported the removal of top People's Liberation Army commander Jung Yu-sia for leaking nuclear weapons secrets to the U.S. So what does his dismissal and the firing of other PLA leaders mean for President Xi Jinping?
I think that Xi Jinping has lost a lot of control of the Chinese military. There have been purges after purges, especially over the last 2.5 years. And you see media reports saying Xi Jinping purged this general or that admiral. I'm not so sure, because when we look at evidence, it suggests that Xi Jinping's adversaries in the military are purging Xi Jinping's loyalists in the military. And that means Xi Jinping may not have the control of the military that people assume that he has. So this is a fluid situation. It changes, I'm sure, by the week. But the continuing purges indicates the Chinese military is in disarray. And by the way, that means it is in no condition to launch a combined air-land-sea operation to take the main island of Taiwan.
So perhaps no immediate threat to Taiwan right now, but how about in the future? Do the Chinese support a war with Taiwan?
A Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be extremely unpopular in the mainland. But a Chinese invasion of Japan might actually be quite popular. And Xi Jinping might see that as one way of preserving his rule, because I think he is being challenged. But he knows that if he creates a high degree of tension with any country, but especially Japan, that prevents other Communist Party figures from challenging him. So I think that he sees this as a way of preserving his legacy and his rule.
You mentioned Japan. Most of us would think a war over Taiwan would be more likely. Why would Xi Jinping risk war with Japan when the country's relationship with the United States has grown closer and stronger under President Trump?
Japan is always a flashpoint with regard to China, regardless of the attitude of Tokyo towards Washington, because the Chinese are getting arrogant. We're starting to see propaganda types dehumanizing foreigners in general, and Japanese in particular, and that can't end well. We know that they've got conflicting territorial claims. Basically, China has baseless, from a legal point of view, baseless claims to the islands that the Chinese call the Diaoyus and the Japanese call the Senkakus in the East China Sea. And those islands are protected by the U.S.-Japan military treaty. So if China were to try to grab them, we would become involved in the defense of the Japanese homeland. This is a situation which is, I think, volatile.
Well, another development is also volatile for China. Its Bureau of National Statistics reports China's population fell by more than 3.3 million in 2025, and births plummeted to a record low, just under 8 million. How serious is this population plunge for China, Gordon?
China is on track to losing about 3/4 of its population between now and the turn of the century. So a country which is now, it says 1.4 billion, could end up being 450 million or so when the clock strikes 2100. You know, the range of estimates is 330 million to about 770 million. I think it's going to be at the lower end of the range for a number of reasons. But wherever it is, this is going to be the biggest demographic fall in history in the absence of war. Even the Black Death in Europe, the bubonic plague, only killed 1/3 of Europe's population. This is going to be much more than that. And it's not only demography, which is long-term, of course, it's the economy. China did not grow at the 5.0% pace that they reported for 2025. We don't know where it was. I don't think anybody in the world really knows, but it could very well have been an economy that was in contraction. So Xi Jinping has got to realize that the motor of China's rise has sputtered out.
Okay, you predicted the decline of China back in 2001 when you wrote the book, The Coming Collapse of China. Gordon Chang, thanks for being with us. The Council on Peace, or Board of Peace, as it is officially known, is a new international entity created by President Trump to oversee Gaza reconstruction. Long-term, the president's vision is to expand the board's work to bring about global peace through conflict resolution. Trump invited 60 countries to join. Among those accepting membership, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Pakistan, Qatar, and the UAE. Our next guest questions the wisdom of including member states that are known for violating human rights. Kiri Kankanwende is External Affairs Leader at Christian Solidarity Worldwide, and she joins us to explain. Kiri, it's good to talk with you again. CSW and I'm sure other organizations are concerned about this Peace Board membership, and you say it undermines international law and human rights by including members like the United Arab Emirates. Why? Tell us more.
Yes, so as you mentioned, the UAE government official and chairman of the board of Manchester City Football Club in the UK, Khaldoon Khalifa Al Mubarak, is sitting on the board. for the UAE, and we're concerned because there is credible evidence that the UAE is supporting one of the parties in the civil conflict in Sudan, which stands accused. This is called the Rapid Support Forces, one of the two fighting bodies, and they stand accused alongside the other party of serious crimes, crimes against humanity, and other war crimes. We've had teams go out and do documentation, and the things we've heard have been truly harrowing. But the evidence is out there. In fact, the UN has reports from its special expert estimating that at least 150,000 people have been killed in that conflict. 30 million are going hungry. 13 million are displaced. And so with what's going on in that country and the UAE's deep involvement there, we do question the wisdom of having this country sit, and a number of others sit on this board. That
group's the former Janjaweed that
Yes.
used to attack people in Darfur, and they're still doing it.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's often forgotten that they are a rebranded Janjaweed, and many will remember the campaigns on Darfur from many years ago. Unfortunately, we're seeing similar abuses now happening across the country.
And we know for many years Qatar has supported the Hamas terror group, Turkey as well. So why should we be concerned about them sitting on the peace board?
Yes, for very similar reasons. It's just a question of whether these states that are actively undermining peace and security worldwide, not to mention the lives of different communities around the world. I mean, these terrorist organizations, they're not just seeking to terrorize specific groups, but also undermine democracies, Western democracies. And so to give these countries a free pass to something as prestigious as the Board of Peace is something that we really do question. Not to mention the fact that the terms and conditions of the board do seem a little bit unusual. And given that for $1 billion you can have permanent membership, and these countries have a lot of money, it does raise the specter that they could be on there for some time.
And concerning the support of Qatar and Turkey, I mean, we're seeing that right now in Syria, them supporting the government there, of course, but attacking the Kurds once again. And we know Turkey's been doing that for years, supporting the militants there and even ISIS, giving them refuge inside Turkey, money, material support. So what other countries concern you right now as members of this board?
There are some authoritarian regimes as well, like Belarus, that are also on the board. But I'd say, there are these individual nations, but the structure altogether and the fact that they will not be subject to scrutiny does give us a lot of concern.
Well, beyond Gaza, some political observers say that Trump's goal is to minimize the influence of the United Nations, maybe even replace it. Trump says the UN is dedicated to peace, but hasn't done much to bring it about. So should the United Nations be replaced by a 60-member Board of Peace? What do you think?
President Trump is not wrong that the UN has its shortcomings and has certainly failed in many areas. However, it was set up for a very specific reason after the Second World War, and it has succeeded in many areas as well. Rather than junk the whole thing, we would actually call for reform, because we have to remember what it's for: securing justice, securing peace around the world. It has done a lot. There is still more to do. But this Board of Peace, with just the 60 nations and that kind of pay for play structure, where they can pay for access, pay for leverage, is deeply worrying, because they will have a lot of the resources at a time when the UN is cash-strapped. So rather than supplant it with something that is already flawed, we'd say work with what we've got and improve it, because the bones are good, the foundations are noble, and there's a lot to work with there. Okay,
Kiri Kankawende of Christian Solidarity Worldwide, thank you from London, sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
Each January 27th, nations around the world observe International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a time to commemorate the liberation of the Nazi concentration and extermination camp in Auschwitz, Germany. It's also a day to recommit societies to Holocaust education and combating anti-Semitism. Joining us with more is Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. Jonathan, 81 years have now passed since the Soviets liberated Jews from Auschwitz, and it seems many people still deny that the Holocaust took place, or at least say it was exaggerated. I know several years ago, an Economist YouGov survey found that 1 out of 5 young Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 believe the Holocaust is a myth. Why, Jonathan? There's so much evidence that proves otherwise.
Well, I don't know that I can answer that question rationally as to why people want to believe it. I think people who are consumers of conspiracy theories, this is a natural for them. And I think the reason why that number has probably increased is because people who ought to know better have been platforming and promoting people who peddle these toxic ideas. I referred to Tucker Carlson, who more than a year ago, had on a faux historian who promotes Holocaust denial, and then just a few months ago, another neo-Nazi who also promotes Holocaust denial. When people see that on what many people want to believe is a credible platform, they're willing to believe it. That's terrible. It's irresponsible, but it doesn't come out of nowhere. It is a product of anti-Semitism, and the irony of this International Holocaust Remembrance Day is that while there will be lots of pious words and noble sentiments uttered at ceremonies around the world, at the United Nations and around the United States, a lot of the people who will be uttering those anodyne sentiments will be people who will also be misappropriating the Holocaust to pursue political agendas, making false analogies. The most recent prominent one was Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota comparing illegal immigrants to Holocaust diarist Anne Frank, something that has nothing to do with the situation and the debate in this country about illegal immigration. But the Holocaust has, in part because there's been a smattering of Holocaust education in this country, often without context, often people trying to universalize it to be just, a lesson about not being unkind to other people, which people shouldn't be unkind to each other. But the Holocaust wasn't about garden variety unkindness. And it's led to the Holocaust being just something of a political metaphor for anything that people don't like. Anybody I don't like is Hitler kind of discourse has become routine. We know that people use that about President Trump, but the Holocaust is just a metaphor for a lot of people, and it's been used by some people, as I've said, on the far right to promote Holocaust denial. It's also being used and misappropriated, especially the word genocide, even more prominently by people on the left as they seek to legitimize and support a genocidal war against the descendants of the survivors of the Holocaust in Israel.
Well, you talk about the politicians who really kind of perpetuate this skepticism. And how about those like New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who says anti-Israel sentiment is not anti-Semitism?
Well, number one, he's wrong. And just to boil down on that one point immediately, if you say that you are anti-Zionist, what you're saying is that you want to deny to Jews rights that you would not deny to any other people. You want to treat the state of Israel in a way that you would not treat any other country. What we call singling out one people for a denial of rights is discrimination, and discrimination against Jews is anti-Semitism. So Mamdani is not only wrong, he's entirely disingenuous. He's not, he's not sincere, because he is someone who is promoting a war against Israel. He's spent his whole political life, it's revolved around his efforts to support the campaign to destroy the one Jewish state in the planet, something that could only be accomplished by a genocide. And let's, give our audience one clear historical fact. The Jewish people have never recovered demographically from the Holocaust. In 1939, there were approximately 18 million Jews alive in the world. Today, there are approximately 15 million. More than 86, 87 years later, and still 3 million fewer than there were alive in 1939. and half of them live in Israel. So if you're against the existence of one Jewish state on the planet, this one Jewish state of Israel, you're basically supporting a campaign of genocide. And let's also remember, genocide was a word coined after the Holocaust to describe what happened in the Holocaust. And to misappropriate it, to redefine it, to claim that Israel's just war of self-defense against Hamas in Gaza is a genocide. Well, if that is a genocide, and it isn't, then every war that was ever fought, including the war that was fought to defeat the Nazis, was a genocide. So we know what people are doing when they use it that way. They are looking to stoke anti-Semitism, stoke this war on the Jews. So if you're doing that, if you're misappropriating the Holocaust, if you're comparing it, comparing Trump to Hitler and comparing illegal immigrants to Anne Frank, honestly, I don't want to hear what you have to say about the Holocaust, because what you're saying is of no value.
Okay, Jonathan Tobin, JNS Editor-in-Chief, thank you for joining us on International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Thank you.
President Trump is scaling back Border Patrol and ICE enforcement in Minneapolis, lessening tensions, at least for now. Customs and Border Patrol Chief Greg Bombino is out. Tom Homan, the new border czar, is taking over.
We have Tom Homan there now. We put him in there. He's great. And they met with the governor, the mayor, everybody else, and we're going to de-escalate a little bit.
This doesn't mean Operation Metro Surge is ending in Minneapolis. It simply means ICE agents will not be as visible or as aggressive in their operations. However, there is one important condition. Mayor Fry and Governor Walz must work with ICE and hand over illegal immigrant criminals. Yes, agitators are out of control in Minneapolis. Calming tensions there is the right thing to do. Many rioters and protesters do not realize they're being used by powerful political forces. These are the ones profiting from illegal immigration, human trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime. Many of these protesters and agitators are being used as scapegoats. Without calming the situation, more lives could be lost. And if the president handles this the right way, it could take away another political talking point for Democrats in the 2026 congressional election. Blessed are the peacemakers. Pray and work for peace. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.